Hello everyone, welcome in. We are going to be doing our session on Pokemon Regionals 101 here. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean we're going to be going over information with regards to how to register, what you can get out of the experience, the process of preparing for regional, and actually making sure you have everything you need to succeed, and then for my most recent regional, how I did. And why do I have any authority to talk over this? I've been in the Pokemon scene for about 15 years at this point. And so I have a lot of experience with it, and I have done very well at a lot of regionals, despite not having that many results on any of the Limitless pages or anything like that. I do have a top 8 regional from a decade ago, which I know, weird, crazy. I have a modern day 2 from LA 2024, and other than that, I very rarely attend regional events, so I always make sure it's a big deal, and I prepare properly for every event that I go to, and I have gone, at worst, 1 win away from day 2 on each of my recent runs, and I have not missed out on prizing in the past 4 years of regional runs that I have done. With that, I'm going to go into my process, how to register, what you can get out of it, and this is open for players, competitors, and spectators, people who just want a new experience, all the same. So, to actually register for an event, what are you looking for? You're looking for Arcanine Labs. You can find them on their X account, formerly known as Twitter, of course. And at set scheduled times, they will release a bunch of seats to the regional, and it'll be first come, first served. So, for example, on January 28th at 7 p.m. CET, you could register for Seville Regionals, and EUIC was 7 p.m. GMT on January 29th. Of course, these regionals have now passed by now, but it's important to know that this is kind of how they announce when regional listings are going up, and how to make sure you can get a seat as soon as possible. You can normally register about 1 to 2 months before an event will start, so it gives you a bit of time to practice, but again, first come first serve, make sure you're there within the first few minutes to guarantee you get in. The main event is around 120 CAD. The Spectre and side event prices are around $30 CAD. I know it seems a little steep, but I'm going to talk about what can and cannot make it worth it for you, for the different tiers, and what you might want to get out of your experience. So, when it comes to the main event, it is 8 to 9 rounds on day 1, and if you do well, up to 14 and 15 rounds of best of 3 Swiss for all of those registered for the main event. So this is our best of 3 main competitive mode that'll get you the most prizing and championship points. In particular, it is a separate best finish limit to your other events, so it'll help you raise your ace trainer if you have not attained it from your local scene. In addition to that, on entry, you receive prizing just for showing up. For Toronto, it was the Gengar mat and the Dawn promo. The Dawn has a little stamp on it that says regionals on it, and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you get a novel promo from your regional, it is possible to have a massive sellback value if you are worried about recuperating your costs, and it is just a very nice promotional material that you get just as a way of thanking you for registering for a regional. In addition, you get full event access for the Friday to Sunday. You get to play the best of the best players. I'll talk about that a little bit more in my own recap, but I actually was very blessed with some opportunities earlier. I'm checking if I'm in VC. I am in VC. I'm gonna disconnect from a VC, make sure I don't interrupt anyone or anything. And let's keep going. I'm gonna shout out the people who I was in VC with later. Regardless, you have full event access, you get to play the best of the best, and you have the same access as the spectators to all of the other events at Toronto. For reference, here is a event hall for Toronto Regionals if you are looking to spectate and or participate. This is about the size of the event that you might expect to see, a very large event, all things considered. Why attend and what tier? For the spectators, you get full event access, you get to go to the Learn to Play booth and figure out how to play the game itself. You get to do a whole bunch of side events, which I'll talk about the side event wall in a second. Lovely and exciting. There's also a retro game area where they'll have a lot of consoles ready, and so you can play Pokemon games like Pokemon Shuffle, Colosseum, Battle Revolution, Pokken Tournament, so on and so forth. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you'll get to play some games early, like for example, EYC had the Pokopia up and running for people to demo, which was awesome. There are also vendors varied by event, and I will go over that a little bit as well. And custom Pokemon Go events. For example, some regional exclusive Pokemon are sometimes available at Pokestops or gyms in the area. For Toronto, I know Turtonator was available, which is normally not available in our area. So you never know what you're going to find. When it comes to the prize wall, here's an image of what one of the prize walls might look like. By participating in side events, you earn side event tickets. By earning side event tickets, you can buy things from the prize wall. And in this lovely cycle, you can get a whole lot of cool merch from the event. It is an upcharge to do side events for the most part, but there's also always people around ready to play if you ever just want to play for fun. When it comes to vendors, there's a couple of very prominent vendors that are at every event, but the vendors will constantly have sleeves, boxes, promotional material, past year promos. They'll have a whole bunch of singles, plushies, custom blind boxes, gacha. Anything under the sun that is Pokemon related, you might be able to find from some of the vendors. So it's important to always take a look out. You never know what you are going to find at a regional vending area. For the day-to-day rundown, on the Friday, you will have the best access to swag and merch. It'll be the best time for you to get to your side events because there are no other events going on, so there's always people in and out. There's always people ready to test, especially since it is before the main event. People want to get in that last minute testing and finalize their ideas. There's also a 128-person league challenge if you're really wanting championship points and you want it to be on a big stage. And you also get to get a lot of knowledge of the venue, where washrooms are, where food is, where local areas are, parking, all of that awesome. Saturday, main event, that's when the big gameplay happens for all of you registered for the main event. The vendors are also less busy at this time, which means that it's easier for you to get everything you might need. There's also lots of people and players around if you ever just want to talk to people in general, and it's the best to connect to other people. On the Sunday, it's Phase 2, which is a few extra hours of gameplay if you're doing very well, occasional discounted merch if vendors are trying to get rid of everything and don't want to get back with them. It is normally the least busy on Sunday because all of the people who are having fun on the Friday aren't there. A lot of the people from the main event who bow out are trying to get home early, and it tends to be a quieter time. It's also the best time to learn because it is the best of the best, and the people who bow out kind of there around hovering. And there is also a League Cup on the Sunday for another chance at championship points. To prepare for a regional, what would I recommend? If you're going in general, snacks, water, always a must-do. You never know how long you're going to have between rounds. I didn't have time for any food until after I was done my final round of the day at Toronto, so it is important to make sure you stock up and get ready for that. Also make sure you have a bank card and cash because you never really know what you're going to need it for, especially with all of the vendors around, with all of the people at TPCI for side events, for food. You never know what you need, so have them both. Also make sure you have your ID and phone to prove your registration, prove who you are, and get yourself into the venue, especially on that first day. You're also going to want Advil or noise dampening earplugs, something like that, because trust me, it is a big room, gets hot very fast, gets overwhelming very fast, very loud. Make sure you keep on top of that as you can. Make sure you also have transportation plans to get to and from the venue. Very important, in my opinion, to make sure that you actually have a secure plan. The more stress you have about that, the less you can stress about the event itself. So always make sure you have your plans set out for that. And also have someone to contact or a rendezvous point for locals. I have a very nice local scene around me, so we made sure that there was always a rendezvous point where after every round we meet up there, and that lasted straight through the entire weekend. It was lovely. So I recommend that as well. If you're a competitor, it's important that you find a deck list that works for you, and we'll go over metagaming a little bit in a little bit. It's a weird concept, but when you're at an event that large, a meta does exist, and statistics are there to help you succeed. I will also recommend that you do a lot of testing. I'll go over my testing process, but there's a lot of things that you might keep an eye out for that. And I also recommend you set a healthy goal. and I'm going to actually linger on this just a little bit. When I say set a healthy goal, I mean that you should set something that for your amount of testing you think is attainable, and something that you would be happy to achieve. Not necessarily something that you would be overjoyed to achieve, not necessarily something where if you don't reach it you'd be bummed, but set a goal where you think that you can reasonably attain it, and it wouldn't be the end of the world if you don't. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about my own process, because it is a very weird concept to grasp, all things considered. Let's start off on metagaming. When it comes to this, your number one resource is Limitless TCG. They will have all of the deck results for all of the recent major tournaments, including statistics on what decks are played and not. For example, here's a graphic from a recent regional on what people were playing to the regional in metashare sorting, and then you can also sort by win rate to see what of those decks are actually performing well. So if you take a look, it says that Gardevoir without the Jellicent and the Dragapult Dusknoir lists are both very highly represented and have very positive win rates, so those are two major decks to keep an eye on. Charizard Noctowl, on the other hand, suddenly has a much lower win rate, but also has a very significant meta share, so it's important to keep an eye on that as well. If you're thinking of just not wanting to go through with all of that and just want to see what you might want to play, you can also take a look at the conversion rates, the amount of decks that are in day 1 versus day 2. Sort by that, you can see what decks tend to succeed at a regional, what decks don't seem to succeed, and if you want to try and cheat your way into a system, you can kind of work your way through that. For example, Gardevoir Jellicent at the regional that I had brought up here has a just below 20% rate when it comes to conversion, but a very, very high overall play group in day 1. Same thing with Dragapult Dusknoir with an even more staggering conversion, and Charizard Noctowl again with a very staggering conversion. So it's important to keep in mind what you are going to play, what will have the most success into the matchups that are relevant, and what other people are likely to play so you know what you're going to play against. It's also important to actually get to know the people who you're playing with and to have a testing group. Even just playing friends in person is a great way to practice, because they will be able to know exactly what you are doing, and they'll be able to work on all of the nitty-gritty details that you might not see off the rip. Next up, your event locators. That will be able to find all of the local events in your area. Those sanctioned events are where people are trying their hardest. Trying to make your way up to those before a regional will always get you nice up-to-date knowledge and get you deck experience that will help you out in the long run. Limitless does also host online tournaments. I've participated in numerous, I've done very well at quite a few of them. I would recommend you all go and take a try at some online Limitless tournaments. The good thing about Limitless tournaments is that they get you prepared for different decks, different matchups, and they will let you master your craft over time to make sure that you know your deck inside and out, all of your tech slots inside and out, and worst case, you don't have that face-to-face pressure of, ooh, what am I going to do, and all of that mind reading. You're just playing your own game, your best game, the best of the best against other people. Likewise, you can also grind on your respective game's ladder. If you are grinding on, let's say, Pokemon Live or Pokemon Showdown, if you are a VGC player perhaps, trying to make sure that you reach reasonable ELO goals and make sure that you try and push yourself on those ladders. It's against people who are pretty serious at a certain point if they keep playing the game that much, so it is pretty important. And last to mention is Metafy and or coaching. Is coaching great for you? This is probably the biggest takeaway for those competitors in our audience. What is coaching going to do for you, depending on what type of player you are? The pros, you'll get to learn all of the secretive lines and specific matchup experience. For example, not too long ago, Henry Zhao released a Gardevoir masterclass that had about, I think, an hour and a half dedicated to the Goldanko matchup, which is incredible for people who are really struggling with that otherwise very difficult matchup. So it's important to keep those types of things in mind. It'll also help you become an expert in your own deck list. You'll get to know why every card is there, you'll get to refine your deck list based on advice from the pros, and you'll get to really create something that is the best, not just for you, but in isolation will let you do the most things in the most relevant situations. You also use the best of the best lines and lists, for every matchup given. It makes your tournament runs a lot easier when you're not going in handicapped off the rip. On the cons end, though, it does cost you some personal experience to figure out these lines, which means that your efficiency of using them in tournament, in set, and finding backup options might be a little bit weaker, and your in-game decision making might falter a little bit if you rely on coaching too much. Because of that, it is important to also do a lot of research and work on your own at your own pace to make sure everything is good for you. Now let's talk about my prep method for Toronto 2026 in a nutshell. This was my local big regional for the year, so I had to figure out what I wanted to do to make it count. My goal was top 512 with a stretch goal of top 64, because top 64 would be better than my best ever modern regional result, but top 512 would be enough for me to get in a very comfortable range to finalize my ace trainer. And I thought that with the amount of testing I was able to do, with only about a month of time to prep, and still being in full-time school with 2 side jobs working, this would be the easiest way that I could prepare for the tournament. So, I did 5 major friend sessions. Each one, we tested top matchups for my top 2 decks in a variety of 2-hour sessions across the day, and we tested 2 different key decks for the tournament. For me, I was on a list designed by, I believe it was, I forget who at this point, honestly, but it was a few Canadian former seniors, now turned masters, that had created a very cool Gholdengo deck list, and I wanted to try and test it out. In addition, Jellicent, very reliable, very consistent, widely regarded as one of the best decks in the format, even though at this time the Luxury Cape Gardevoir was starting to come out. I wanted to have experience on that as well. In addition, I went to 3 League Cups and 3 League Challenges, each of which I performed very well at, leaving me more confident in my deck choices. I also did 5 200 plus person online tournaments with both of my deck options, obviously the Gholdengo and the Gardevoir. I did 2 runs with the Gholdengo to try and experiment with that list, including one list where I got a little experimental, and then 2 standard Gardevoir runs just to see what my limits might be with that archetype. On the latter, I hit 1800 on Arc Rank, which is reasonable enough. It means I won enough games. I didn't really have a lot of time to grind the season further. And I did not do any coaching for the tournament because I personally don't see the value that coaching would bring for me, as someone who very much likes to understand my lines from personal experience, and I was very confident in the lists that I had going on. But I did get some advice on Jellicent into the Gholdengo matchup from some high-level peers, and I did hear a word or 2 of wisdom from a couple of people who brought it to the highest of heights in the past. With that being said, I did choose I did choose Gardevoir Jellicent for my Toronto tournament run, and I did not get top 8 like my mat says. That is my mat from, again, a decade ago. However, I did end up doing reasonably well, and I am going to talk about the deck list really quick because there are some interesting notes, and I am very confident in this deck list being one of the better Jellicent deck lists out there, despite not having the accolades to back it up in as dramatic a sense. The 2/2/2 Gardevoir line means that you are still able to be relatively greedy on bench space, and you're able to make sure that you're starting some of your more useful Pokemons more frequently. That being said, 2 Kirlia still, so that you can use TM Evolution in the Dragapult matchup, and double Rare Candy to try and get out your Guardy as fast as possible, means that you very frequently hit your turn 2 Gardevoirs even still. Running 1 TM Evo, 1 Devo, and 1 Charm, again, makes your Pult matchup very strong, but also makes matchups like Charizard very strong, and makes your Mirror relatively consistent. In particular for Charizard, because you run 1 copy of Team Rocket's Watchtower, you're able to lock down their engine mid-game, and after a Devo, they can't just get all of their Terras out again, they have to find a stadium, then they can start to try and chain off, and even then, you might be able to destroy some of their Terra lines with damage off of your Frillish and Munkidori, and your Frillish shuffling, to get to a very strong board state in that matchup. Watchtower is a weird inclusion. It is very good against Blood Moon Ursaluna, Noctowl engines, which means that's good into Raging Bolt. It's good into the Charizard engines for reasons as I've already said. and it makes control a little bit easier to navigate around, even though they can kind of do everything they want anyways. It gives you another option, that plus an ability lock plus an Iono Shuffle. You can generally lock them out of some late game plays, and because you have 7 Shuffle supporters, you can normally keep the game going for a very long time. 1 copy of Mystery Garden instead of double Artisan makes your mirror under Frillish lock better, especially since I'm on only 2 Ralts and not 3. It means that my lines into my Gardevoir in the mirror with item lock might be a slight bit weaker than 3 would otherwise let it be, but having something like Mystery Garden to draw cards, set up my discard, and because I don't run any research, having it as another way to get my energy in the discard, to start charging a Jellicent, to start charging the Screamtail, start charging my main attackers for that matchup is very strong. Only 1 counter catcher is just because I'd never really felt like Gust was all that important when I was able to control the field with my damage counters as efficiently as I could. 2 Arven instead of going to 4 Determination and a Research is a weird choice, but I did it because in early game against Tank Kangaskhan, going Arven for Secret Box for Watchtower, and Evo, promote a Frillish or a Munkidori, go for my Evo. I can generally have very consistent lines in that respect. And one last note about the deck list, having a Professor Turo still just makes me a little bit more lock-proof, and it makes me able to remove my Diancie on bad starts. I'm very content with it. Overall, very content with how the list turned out. And here was my overall matchup spread. I ended up winning against 3 Dragapult Dusknoirs, very reliably, all things considered. One of them at the end was against a good friend of mine, and number 8 was... Sorry, I'm getting scattered a little bit again. 1, 3, and 7, my Pultnoir matchups, I did well. The 7th one against a friend, we ended up doing a gentleman's agreement due to our game taking a long time, but after the gentleman's was fully resolved, we ended up agreeing in my favor, and once the match slip was turned in, I did decide to play it out just to show that I did in fact have it on board, just to make sure I cleared everything with regard to situation, and I'm very thankful for that. I ended up giving them some of my packs of prizing as a thank you. When it comes to my other rounds, I beat a Charizard Pidgeot. Again, Watchtower coming in huge, Jellicent coming in huge, the ability to hit a lot of item locks, and the ability to actually put on damage and pressure instead of just slowly chipping with Munkidoris and Frillish meant that I was able to get very far ahead in the damage counter race. My Devo plays were destructive, and I was able to maintain my field very easily. And then the Goldango in the last round, they weren't exactly ready to deal with my Gardevoir Frillish shuffling, and so I ended up running away with that game pretty easily. My 3 losses, I lost to Gardevoir Drifloon. It was a Jelligardy list with Drifloon, Luxcape, and Bravery Charms, 3-2-2 Gardy, and it had just about everything for the mirror specifically. Unfortunately, she ended up ending 2-4, but it was a very fast game and not one that I was very proud of my play for, so I did sharpen up for my future games. In round 5, I ended up prizing double Frillish and then triple Monkey into Goldango. Not much you can do about that, especially when they run 4 boss, double Turo, and the Lana's Aid. I can't really do much against that. And round 6, I got to face an idol of mine in the game, Ross Cawthon, in my opinion, the best deck builder of all time. And I ended up losing 2 games to him, although I did have a very close game in game 2, with the ability to set up a Devo play if I had managed my damage counters off Munkidori a little bit more efficiently and maximized my counter catcher just a little bit more. All in all though, very happy with my play, happy with my matchups. I did end 5-12, meeting my goal, and from my prizing I did get a Mega Charizard SIR, so I can't really complain about that now, can I? With that, I did end Ace Trainer. This graphic is slightly out of date because I created this slide deck well before recording the actual audio for this take. However, I ended up getting first at a challenge in September on Terrabox, second in October with Pikalist Terrabox, second at a challenge in December with Pure Gardy, and another first more recently on Jelligardy once again. For cups, I got a top 4 cup with Picolister Box and Keys Pure Guardy, and 2 top 8s with Jelly Guardy. Toronto Regionals, I had a 5-3 record, 440 championship points. Only 1 major attended, but that's all I intend on doing, with a conversion rate for championship points at events now sitting at exactly 80% with the end of the season. All in all, very happy with my play for this season. If you want to see any deck profiles on any of the below decks, please be sure to leave some information down in the comments down below, and I will get to it. With that, allow me to introduce myself for those of you who this is your first time viewing a video of mine. I'm Kazapniak, and when it comes to my resume, I have a Modern Regionals Day 2 with top 128 in 2024 at LA Regionals, a Regionals top 8 at 2016 Toronto, playing an expanded deck known as Argots Jolteon Vileplume. There's already a deck profile on my channel for that video, if you would like to go and take a look. I also have a State Championships top 4 in 2015, playing Seismitoad Suicune with 2 Yveltal. To kind of keep fields sustained, do a lot of chip damage with Hypnotoxic, and try and get as far as I can in board state just through disruption and being a little annoying, and I ended up getting a top 4 state championships with that. I have also attained my Ace Trainer for the 2025 and 2026 seasons as of now. I'm known as a rogue specialist, but I decided to play something meta to Toronto just to try and keep up with the pace of the game, and because I felt it would give me the best odds of success. I consider myself more of a deck builder than a player, however, I'm always happy to help out with trying to maximize your odds in any given time. And lastly, I am looking for a team and or a sponsor. I am based in the Greater Toronto area for the Toronto region in Ontario, Canada. However, international, whatever, I'm just looking for people who I'm able to test with or hear from, and ways for me to get all of the things I need to put on the best shows possible in the most unique ways at the most events that I can. With that, if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe and leave a comment down below. Even liking the video, or if hyping is still a thing on YouTube, hyping the video would be awesome. Get my name out there, make sure that more people hear about the wonderful things going on this channel. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded last. School is being very intense, but I do have a lot more content ready to push out, especially with post-rotation coming up, and I am working on my own card game that I look to make a video on in a little bit. Likewise, I do also stream, I do also advertise my lists, opinions, and others on my X, and we do also have a Discord channel. All of the links to everything should be down below as well in the description. With that, I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you guys for coming down, and thank you for attending Pokemon Regionals 101.